Welcome to Ask Nelda Almost Anything. My name is Nelda Schulte, and my business, suspiciously, is the same as my banner behind here, neldaschulte.com. And I help property investors and landlords build a profitable business with do it yourself resources such as courses, coaching, mentoring, and tons of free resources as well. And the reason I do this is because when I bought my very first property, I made a ton of mistakes and wanted to put my efforts into helping other landlords and property investors not step in some of the landmines that I stepped in. And part of the reason I do this too is so that I can share expert advice from subject matter experts with you. And to that end, I have a really special guest tonight. We have Sherilynn Milson, who is a owner financing, owner selling expert. And she's going to be sharing her tips with us tonight. And she got into it because she was a professional investor since 2006. And then when she ran out of capital, she had to kind of find some creative strategies that she could use to buy properties with zero or very little money down. And she did it. And then she decided to start teaching her creative strategies. And she's been doing that since 2010. And since then, she hasn't applied for a mortgage since the spring of 2016. So I think she's been really quite successful in this area. And I would like to welcome you, Sherry. Thank you very much for joining us tonight.
Thanks for having me.
So why don't we launch right in? Why don't you tell me, a lot of people are probably wondering, what the heck is seller financing or owner financing? How does it all work? So can you walk us through?
The in a nutshell, you're leaving. You're basically agreeing on a mortgage between the buyer and the seller, instead of going to get a bank mortgage. Now, when you do that, there's usually an underlying mortgage between the seller and the bank, and that stays in place, and we work with that. And then whatever equity is still in the property, that is the owner's equity, then we agree on when and how much that'll be paid, and all of those details. And that's all written into a financing schedule that becomes part of the purchase contract. But yeah, instead of going to a bank and getting a brand new mortgage and having the application and waiting and fingers crossed, we're just agreeing to, yes, I want to buy your property, you want to sell the property, we'll figure it out between us.
That sounds great.
And it's that simple.
Yes, and actually I was doing some research on this, and I realized that this is probably the way most people bought houses before banks came onto the picture.
Well, it was really huge back in the initially when mortgages first started, and you needed 50% down. And who had that? So it was really big when mortgages were first starting, and as house prices increased, but people didn't automatically have that much more money in the bank. So that was a big part of it. And then it also became popular again when interest rates were so high, and to get a new mortgage, then it would be insane when there's this one that's 6% that's already in place. So, and that's going to be the case now too. I mean, if interest rates keep going, it's going to be an extra buying bonus to be able to take over a lower interest mortgage. So that's another reason it makes it attractive.
So what kind of a person wants to sell their house without using a realtor? And what type of a person, not kind of a person, what type or types of people wants to or want to buy a house without using a bank? I'm just going to grab some water.
The types of people who want to buy the house without using a bank are usually going to be investors who maybe have hit a mortgage wall for a while, or ran out of capital like I did. Because I've never hit the mortgage wall yet, because most of our properties are either legally suited or rent to own, so it's higher cash flow. But still, you do run out of money. And if you're buying with this strategy with low money down or no money down, you can buy a whole lot of properties without any joint venture partner, without RSP loans, without any private money. So that's why I like it, because I would rather have properties 100% mine instead of have partners, because it just seems like joint venture partners always want to sell at the absolute worst time. So So, let's see if we can get some more properties all on our own. But as far as the sellers of the properties, the thing that I like to keep in mind is you never know what somebody's motivation might be.
No.
Now, first of all, I want to make sure I say this because I forgot the last webinar I did. This is a huge strategy in multifamily and commercial, because multifamily and commercial are used to dealing with business people, with investors, and that's who uses this strategy more often than not. Whereas if you're just buying a house, well, you're dealing with just a mom and pop family who have no knowledge of what this strategy is. So now you've got to explain and everything. So you're not going to find it works with every seller. But in multifamily, yes, most multifamily sellers and commercial sellers know what this is, and they're open to using it, at least for part of the deal. Now, when it comes to single family homes, why somebody might want to use this, there's a lot of reasons. And if somebody just is facing the possibility of foreclosure, maybe they're in arrears a bit, they know it's coming, they know they're in a hole they can't get out of, and they don't want to screw up their credit. So that's a huge portion of the people. We also have people who just don't want to deal with realtors at all, ever. Well, one place we bought, they had, the family had, I think, 3 dogs and 3 cats, and it was just it was a pet home.
Yeah.
And they're thinking, oh my gosh, just the thought of having this all prepped for a realtor to come through, and then what are we going to do with all the dogs and cats, because you don't want the animals running around. So for them, it was just, let's just get rid of it. I just want it gone. And so, yeah, there's all kinds of reasons why somebody might want to go this creative way rather than the conventional sold through a realtor.
Yeah, I guess possibilities are endless. Or I'm thinking maybe even somebody who doesn't have enough equity in their home to use a realtor. If they used a realtor, they'd go into the hole. So they'd rather do seller financing and either make a profit or at least break even.
Yeah, absolutely. If somebody has very low equity where the realtor's fees would come out of their pocket, that still can be a good deal. Even though we're not getting any free equity, we're still paying nothing or very little down. But then the other thing is, if it's a really advantageous mortgage, if the mortgage has really good terms, low monthly payments, so then we've got money coming in every month, it's okay to get a property where you're paying, more or less full market value, if all the numbers work, and more importantly, if because there's always going to be an upside. Because I always say to people, just because you can buy a property with 0 down doesn't mean you should necessarily buy it with 0 down. So if the numbers all work and it's in a good solid area in a nice neighborhood in a town with a strong economy, and for instance, right now a lot of Canada is starting to increase, or already has increased in their real estate market. So yeah, I'm okay with buying a property at full market value right now, or even in some cases a little bit above, and then just ride it out for the couple of years that we have left on that underlying mortgage. And then what we do is we either sell it to a third party, and for us often that's a rent to own tenant that we put into these houses. So now you're helping out 2 families, which is awesome. Or sometimes it's a fix and flip, or sometimes it's a fix and refinance, or sometimes there's no fix, and we just, based on the mortgage pay down and the gain in value, we're able to refinance without putting any or much money into it. So that's always fun. You buy it with nothing up front. You ride out that underlying mortgage with the seller financing for a few years, and then you're able to refinance it for almost nothing down still. So
that's pretty good. That's a pretty sweet deal. That's not, because whenever you think about buying properties, you always think of the traditional things that we're used to. Go to a bank, save up your money. If you don't have enough money, find a joint venture partner. But you're basically, what I'm hearing you saying is joint venture partners can be like a bad marriage, and and maybe someone wants to exit and the other one doesn't, and then you've got this acrimonious situation happening. So it's better to be on your own. And seller financing allows you to do that because you're just dealing with the seller, just you and the seller. Yeah. And you agree to the terms in advance, and you crunch the numbers in advance, so you see whether or not that property is going to profit for you based on what you want to do with it. I'm guessing your exit strategy. So you figure out your exit strategy first? and then you go backwards, or how do you do it?
What I do is I look at the numbers and see which exit strategies could work on this and which
Oh,
holding strategies. Because, for instance, ideally, you want to get a property where the numbers work just as a regular rental. So your principal, mortgage, taxes, insurance, all of that is lower than what you anticipate the rent could be. And you want to underestimate. You don't want to go with, oh, but maybe I could get this much rent. No. But so if it works, if the numbers work as a regular rental and it's just a nice plain vanilla property in a good solid community, that's what you're looking for. Then from there, you can explore the other possibilities. For instance, there are you might be looking at, okay, now maybe we'll do a rent to own on it instead, because then we're able to get a little bit more each month because of that monthly contribution to the future down payment. So you can look at other strategies. Occasionally there is a property where it sounds really good, except I know the numbers won't work as a rental. And then those are properties you sometimes really just have to go and look at them and see, what else can I do with this? Because as a regular rental, I know it's going to lose money every month.
okay.
Now, that being said, if you're putting zero money down on a property instead of putting $60,000 out of your pocket, and now the reason why the payments would be really high is usually because the person selling the property is set up on an accelerated payment mortgage. Usually that's why. So they're paying extra to the principal. If the only reason that the money that you're going to be out of pocket every month is because that money is going to the principal, then it still makes sense because you've paid nothing down, and it's like you're making a little tiny $200 a month installment onto the down payment over the next 3 years instead of $60,000 up front. So yeah, you really got to look at the numbers kind of creatively.
Yeah. So how did you learn all those strategies though? Where you're thinking, well, what am I going to do with this property? I could do rent to own. I could fix and flip. Like, how did you figure all that out? How did you learn all that?
Well, the funny thing is, it was one of my very first agreement for sale deals, and it was because that's what the technical term is for this, for buying with seller financing. So it was one of my first ones, and this woman had a high interest second mortgage, and it was, oh gosh, it was 40,000 or something like that. So it doesn't make sense to pay that out. Well, that I might as well just buy a regular property. So she had a high interest second mortgage. So this was not going to be a long-term seller finance deal, but the house needed a bunch of work because unfortunately her husband had died mid renovation.
Oh boy.
And the renovations weren't done very well. We had to rip a lot of them out.
Yeah.
So we looked at this. We thought, okay, well, we'll do the seller finance purchase, and it'll be 6 months or less while we do the renovation and sell it. And so then we did that all up. It looked beautiful. We listed it with our realtor, and about 2 days later, I'm sitting there thinking, instead of selling this, we've added so much value to this property now. We could refinance this, cash out the seller from her high interest loans, and we could refinance this and turn around and do it as either a regular rental or a rent to own. We don't usually do single family rentals, so for us it'd be a rent to own, but it would have made a fantastic rental for someone. And then I was thinking even further, thinking, and you know what else we could do? So we'd still end up with, I think it would have been 30,000 of our own money in the property if we did that. And we could do a joint venture, because I'm not opposed to joint ventures. I do like them, but I just find that they always seem to want to sell at the wrong time. So that leaves 30,000 in the property. We could get a joint venture, and a joint venture partner is going to look at this and go, 30,000 to invest, and I get this much of the property. That's a smoking deal, because the return on investment would be super high with that tiny of an investment. So then we could turn around and do that, and it could be a rent to own or a rental. And just then my phone rang. I was so excited. But then my phone rang. My realtor said, we have an offer on the property.
Of course. When it rains, it pours. Yeah.
And it was within the amount that we wanted. So it was like, okay, we'll sell it. But yeah, it's just so funny once you start working with these creative strategies, then if you keep an open mind or have somebody to, give you a few ideas, bounce ideas off of, then you find that it just, it's kind of mind blowing.
The gears start turning, and then
Yeah.
and like you said, if you bounce ideas off somebody, then someone else might come up with something you hadn't thought of either, or a combination. You're like, wow, that would really be great. Okay, so that's how do you find the houses? Like, do you have a criteria for properties? Like, they can only be 10 years old, or I don't take anything that is in a bad neighborhood, or nothing in this area of town, or what's your criteria? How do you find places?
Well, for me, my favorite are those plain vanilla properties. So a single family house, not townhouse, that is in a decent neighborhood, and like a B neighborhood is fine, and is as I was saying before, in an area where there's a good, strong economy. So we focus on the greater Edmonton area just because it's easier to project manage and do this rent to own and that sort of thing. But when I do get a property that comes across my desk that is not fitting that system, either, as you say, really old, or if it needs a full gut, I don't have the team for that. So if it needs a full gut, that's not for me. If it's a townhouse or a condo, but what I do with those is I reach out to my colleagues that I know who do those, and we end up getting a lot of people helped, because some of these people are desperate sellers.
Yeah.
Some of them, again, just have a lot of dogs, but a lot of them just really need out. They've got transferred to a different province or something, and they just need out.
Right.
But yeah, so it's plain vanilla is my thing.
So you look for properties in areas where it's a decent area, nothing too fancy, and not too many repairs or renovations. And your niche is single families, not condos or townhouses.
Yeah.
I don't really like condos or townhouses. They're just, having worked as we had our own property management business, my husband and I, and oh my sweet Lord, you're having to deal with the condo board, who sometimes are crazy. Most of the time they are crazy. You've got the property management company that deals with the condo association, who are supposed to fix things. They usually don't. They don't return your calls. You've got all these tenants. I've had crazy tenants who, one guy had mental health issues, and he was convinced the people underneath of him were the devil. And so he'd go down and terrorize them and scream at them, bang on their door. Like, parking, I don't even want to talk about parking. So whenever people talk to me about condos, I'm like, stay away. No way. Oh, and then here's the favorite one. We get all the tenant issues resolved. It was really difficult to rent this one condo. There was a crazy neighbor underneath who was always hammering on the ceiling with a pole, and it was bad. Got it all resolved, got the perfect tenant in there. Everything was fine. A woodpecker started pecking on the wall, and then the woodpecker's family, like generations, kept coming back. And so to get rid of the woodpecker, we had to go through Wildlife Canada, blah, 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 blah. And then in between doing that with the property management company, they switched. We had to start all over again. In the meantime, the woodpeckers had burrowed a hole from the outside of the wall into the inside of the wall.
Oh, wow.
Like, they had to actually go in and like plaster, put concrete, insulation. Unbelievable. So, after a few of those experiences, I'm like, I would never invest in a condo unless it was waterfront property in Vancouver, concrete building.
Well, that's a really good point, because it really depends on which area you're in. So if you're in New York, New York. I don't know why that popped in my head first, but Toronto, Vancouver, condos are a normal thing that so many people own. But in Edmonton, for instance, it's still people want their space. They want houses. So the market isn't as warm to condos, especially, and then also townhouses. Townhouses, I think, do better in Edmonton, because for families, you've got that little patch of grass, right? I've remembered one more criteria. When I'm looking at the price range for my ideal property, it's going to be a decent starter home or a step or two above a starter home, that's the best place, because those make really good rentals in any market.
Okay.
And there's always a market for those for rent to own as well. So that's why I like that that nice starter home to one or two steps above.
Excellent. So how do you find them? Do you go driving through neighborhoods, trolling for places, knocking on doors? Do you send out flyers? Do you put up signs that say, I'm looking for a home in your area? Do you go through
I've used a few methods. I'm not a sign person to put signs up, because I know they work great for some people, but I've seen so many signs that look like a 5-year-old wrote them,
Yeah.
and just, we buy houses cash and a phone number, and it just, they end up looking trashy.
Yeah.
I have a colleague who has professionally done signs that they put up, and I like those, but the ones that look like a 5-year-old got a hold of mommy's Sharpie, please don't do that, please. But again, they do work well for a lot of people. I'm really curious as to find out what somebody's numbers are on those. But I have used flyers, I've used mail outs, I've done phone calls to for sale by owners. But my favorite way is just getting the hits on my website. So we spent quite a bit of money getting a professionally designed website. So we, even when I'm not doing any active marketing, then I still get a few just trickling in all the time. And then the ones that look really good, I jump on those. And the ones that don't fit my ideal, I refer those to somebody who might like it. So, and the big ones are the full renos, because there are quite a few that are a full renovation, because those have such a small market to begin with. And people are thinking, okay, well, yeah, I can list it on the MLS, but it doesn't show well. The only people who are going to buy it are property investment companies. Yeah. That's how much work this needs. So then they decide, well, why don't I just call a few? So we get quite a few of those.
Yeah, but the big rentals are not something that you take, though, because that's you pass.
But I've always got people who take those. So yeah, it's no worry for me.
Oh, well, I really like your philosophy of where if you get something that doesn't suit you, you find other people you can send it off to and help out. That kind of a mentality of abundance, I think, is very nice. And so do you actively recruit for tenants who are looking for properties, or do you go on the reverse, look for properties first and then find a tenant later?
Oh yeah, we get the properties first, and then, so for instance, if it's just a regular rental, well, that's an easy thing. But if it's going to be, if we're trying for a rent to own, what I'll actually do is market those properties as for rent to own, and sometimes even for sale. Because we have had a few where we got such a good deal on the property, we got some free equity, and it wouldn't have mattered if I had just turned it over and sold it the next day for the full market value. Well, actually, yeah, one of them I did that, where I listed it for rent to own, and for sale. We ended up selling it. I only had possession of this house for 2 months. And in that 2 months, even with selling through a realtor and paying full realtor's commissions, I netted 20, and we had a couple minor repairs to do, but really nothing. I netted $26,000 for holding a property for 2 months.
That's fantastic.
And that took me all of about 5 hours of work.
Oh, good for you. But that wasn't your first deal, I'm guessing.
No, and that's one that came in off the website. That was just what do they call that? Organic lead. Somebody phoned me up, said, yep, I can't make my next mortgage payment. I don't want to ruin my credit. My husband and I are getting divorced, and he's already moved out, and we can't afford this nice house. And I need to downsize because we can't afford this, and we need it gone now. So we helped out.
And you did. I like that too. I like that you're helping out. I'm not really crazy about banks or CRA, especially at this time of the year. They always like to reevaluate everything I do. So I do my taxes once, send them off to my accountant, and then I get to do them again. So I've just gone through my second iteration, and yeah, I'm not going to say anything else. This is public. So You mentioned with the one property that you put $30,000 in. I think that was the one where you renoed and you were thinking about all the creative strategies, but then it ended up selling really fast. So, do you typically put any money into these?
Well, remember this one was the fix and flip type.
Right.
So we bought it with zero down with agreement for sale with seller financing. The money that we put in was the money for renovations. So
Okay.
this is a fantastic way to do flips, because instead of getting expensive bridge financing where there's I think the application fee is something like $4,000 just for the
Right.
application fee, and all of the fees and high interest that you've got for a renovation mortgage, just buy on agreement for sale. You take over the existing financing, and it's great because you're telling the seller, okay, well, we can close whenever you want. We'll give you a really good price. And all we have to do is work with this financing until we sell it. So, we anticipate that'll be within 4 months, but let's go be safe and give it this long, whatever you agree on. And of course, always renewable just in case. And the seller needs to understand that, yeah, there's a chance that this is going to get renewed, because who knows what happens in a flip.
Yeah.
Oh gosh, for one of ours, I did not know my contractor was doing this. I had given him a little too much of free rein on this, but how could I ever imagine he was special ordering cabinets?
Oh.
And they got delayed, and the cabinets took, I think it was six weeks or something like that. This is a flip. You don't special. So things happen. So you always want to make sure you've got a plan A, B, C, and D, and that you're covered, and that there's full transparency between you and the seller. So in our agreements, we have it's in the main agreement. It's same as a mortgage. You sign the little mortgage, commitment. You sign the mortgage commitment when you're getting the mortgage, and that's anywhere from 2 to 5 pages. And then when you're at the lawyer's office, you're signing a 30-page document. There's extra stuff in there. And a couple mortgages we've been burnt on where the extra stuff should have been explained in the first agreement, so we knew what we were signing into, and we see it on the day of signing, which had already been delayed because my bank was not giving the mortgage documents. And we're signing this, and we're going, wait a minute, how do they calculate the mortgage prepayment penalties? You've got to be kidding me. Long story short, we ended up paying a $16,000 penalty when it should have been a $3,000 penalty.
I hate that.
But anyway.
And that was the mistake, or the bank adding something in extra?
Yeah, so the banks are adding stuff in extra, not explaining it fully. So it's really important to make sure that all of the really key points are on that first purchase agreement that they sign. We put it in as extra terms, so it's really clear. I'm big on full transparency, especially when you're dealing with somebody who may be a distressed seller, and they are under stress, and they are emotional, and maybe they're not thinking 100% clearly, and they're not maybe hearing everything you say. But at least if it's written down and they can also read it, that makes it potentially more clear.
Yeah. Well, like anything that's written or documented, people always have creative interpretations, and they'll say, well, I thought you meant, not always, but like you said, when people are distressed, they're not taking in information all that well, and they're not retaining it. So you do have to document. So that brings me to your team. Who do you have on your team? Do you have your own lawyer? Do you always use your own lawyer?
I always use the same lawyer. And it took, I had just the best lawyer who knew agreements for sale and rent to own like the back of his hand. And that guy went and retired on me. And then
that's so selfish. How could he do that?
I know, how selfish. It's right. So then I went through quite a few lawyers before I found my current lawyer, who I really had confidence could deal with these more creative deals. We won't get into the other lawyers, but yes, you definitely need to have a lawyer who understands these little nuances. And the nice thing is, though, now when we are buying a property, we always recommend that the seller take the documents and have them reviewed by their own independent lawyer. But the
Yeah.
fact is they don't have to. And this is another thing that is helpful for people who are in distress, because we've had people say to me, I can't afford the legal fees. Okay, well, you can actually sign the documents at my lawyer. That'll make it official. And then I have this all in writing. My lawyer cannot advise you in any way whatsoever. So if you want advice, you need to seek your own independent counsel. But you can sign at the lawyer, and then this becomes official. So with some people, they're really that desperate where it's just, I don't care. I just want it gone. And you actually hear that phrase quite a bit. I just want it gone.
Wow.
Yeah.
Well, it's sad people get into that situation, but it's happy that you can help them out and help them ease their burden there with relieving their problems. So you've got a lawyer on your team, but do you draft your own documents? Do you put together your own documents?
Sorry. Bye-bye.
Is that your lawyer now?
I forgot to tell my kids that I'm in my home office, and I forgot to tell my kids that I was in a broadcast. There is one. Oh no, that's rent to own. I do have a few documents that I have drafted 100% on my own, and those are those transparency type documents where it's spelling every possibility out. And but the other documents came from lawyers' templates that I have improved.
Yes,
dramatically.
So. Yeah,
because some of the wording, as you mentioned before, is open to interpretation, and then some of it is so open to interpretation that it becomes meaningless.
Yeah,
I mean, legalese is just a silly.
Well, yeah. If you think back to the original lawyers got paid per word, so I mean, I still think they do. So a lot of them. So yeah, at times when I've gotten legal documents, I've taken up my dictionary to just try and figure out what the heck those sentences mean. And I don't think I'm a dumb person, but I don't have a legal background. It shouldn't be that hard to read a document. That's.
Well, I mean, yeah. I took contract law as part of my business degree, but that doesn't help if something is not written clearly.
Yeah.
So, but I guess the contract law helps me to write it more clearly. But yeah, so a lot of my contracts are, well, of course, the purchase and sale agreement, for instance, is your standard provincial or state or whatever purchase agreement that the local real estate council uses, and then it's got the additional terms and the financing schedule. But otherwise, it is the standard contract for your province.
Okay.
But then all of the extra stuff that you put in that outlines how everything is going to be handled, like for instance renewals. When are we able to get a renewal, and how does that work if we're doing it? That all has to be spelled out.
Yeah, and that I imagine would change. Some people might be looking at 3 to 5 years. Other people might be looking at a longer term. So yeah, that all has to reflect your individual agreement. Mm-hmm. So besides the lawyer and your documents, who else do you have on your team?
Well, of course, I have a realtor who I trust to pull comparables and do a comparative market analysis for me, because I don't have a real estate license. So and I'm not focused on one specific area. I'm focused on that specific type of property, right, rather than a geographical area. And of course, you're looking for somebody who is willing to do this, willing to keep their name on the mortgage for 2 or 3 or 4 years. And that's not for everyone. If somebody needs to buy another house right away, they might need to port that mortgage. They might not qualify to get a second mortgage and leave this one in their name. So it doesn't work for everybody. So I'm after the house that works. And so that means I am not a geographical specialist. I don't know what a house in Terwilliger is compared to a house in near downtown in Riverdale. So
you've got a realtor who can help you run comparables on properties, just so that you can see what the value is before you go in and make an offer. Right.
And of course, the realtors that I use are fantastic sellers. They're the top sellers. in the area. So when it is a property that just can't work, for instance, somebody needs to port their mortgage, they can't do this at all, then if it's a fixer-upper and I have a buyer who can do cash, I can refer them to them, but otherwise it's to the realtor, because they are usually the best option to sell rather than for sale by owner.
Good to know. That is very good to know. Is there anyone else you need on your team when you're doing seller finance?
Gosh, well, not seller financing specifically, but actually, the accountant is really important too. One thing to keep in mind with these are basically a flip. Even if you're not doing a fix and flip, fix and refinance, but the CRA classifies this as active income. It's a flip. In real estate terms, the intention, and this is where it's the key, is the intention. If you're buying a property with the intention of selling it in 2 years, that's a flip. So it's active income. So your accountant needs to be, he's a key player in making sure that everything is declared properly. You also want to consider incorporating and that's what we did once we were doing several creative deals. Then we incorporated, because it's a further level of protection, but also because it's active income, then you get the advantage of the active income tax rate for small business. So that leaves more money in the company to be reinvested. Of course, if you're taking it out, then you pay personal tax on what you take out anyway. But yeah, leaving it in to just churn over. Because the important thing to remember here is doing anything creative like this, agreements for sale, fix and flip, rent to own, it's all active income, meaning you got to work for it. You've made yourself a job. And that is not long-term sustainable wealth. The whole point of doing all of this is to make down payment money for the regular real estate purchases, like the multifamily that we are trying to get into right now. So we are taking the creative money and upgrading.
So you don't own any multifamilies right now, but you are going to own a multifamily?
Yeah, we're hoping to transition very soon into some multifamily.
Okay, so for people who would not understand the term multifamily, can you define that for them?
Sure. In most cases, it's just any building or complex that has 6 or more units. I believe 5 still counts as single family. So if you have 8 townhouses in a row, that's a multifamily building, or a small apartment or a big apartment or whatever. But yeah, and anything more than 6 or more qualifies as multi. And the thing with multi is then you as a person and you as a worker and an income earner are not the primary concern on that mortgage application. It's a whole different ballgame for mortgages there. So conceivably, if you've hit a mortgage wall in your investing life, you can start doing agreement for sale purchases, buy a whole bunch of those to make the down payment to go and buy a multifamily building where they don't really care what your job is. It is easier to get financing for multifamily. So use this to make the money to go buy a multi. Just not in Edmonton, they're mine.
So are you wanting it's sort of a personal question. I guess you don't have to answer it, but everybody goes into real estate with a different idea of what it's going to do for them. When I see people buying multifamilies, I usually think of them as legacy investors. So wanting to leave things to their children or to generations of people you're shaking your head. Okay. So what was your reason for getting into real estate, and what did you want it to do for you, and has it done that for you?
Well, I've always wanted my own business right from the time I was a little girl. I always wanted to be the boss of that. So, of course, keeping my eyes open for what would be a good business, but I also don't want to be tied to a business 24/7. So any kind of storefront office type business is not really my thing. I want to be able to work how much I want, when I want. If I want to take some time off, oh, sure, then my business is not expanding, but it maintains itself without me. So real estate is a fantastic business to be in where you can be as hands-on as you want if you want to expand your business, or as hands-off as you want if you just want to put it on cruise control and let your team handle it. And that's the big thing for me. It's the now when you get into the legacy type stuff, the really personal reason for it is I don't want anybody close to me to ever live in a nursing home, ever. So that's, my kids can go figure out their own stuff, but my parents, they're not living in a nursing home. I can tell you that right now.
Interesting. Okay, so that is, I've never heard that before. Like, I've heard people say they wanted financial freedom and they wanted to travel. I've never, well, yeah, but I've never heard anyone say, my parents are not going in a nursing home. My dad's in a care facility right now. He's 92 and he has vascular Alzheimer's disease. And, but the place he's in is like, it's very nice. It smells nice. It looks nice. The people, it's got a section that you walk into where the people who live there are very independent. They just have all their meals there. And then there's a section for it. It's a lockdown unit for the dementia ward because they go wandering, as my dad does. Clothing is sometimes optional.
That's a different story though. When it's for their own safety, which is that case, then no, that's a different story. They need that extra help. And yeah, most of those places are pretty darn nice.
Yeah, but that's kind of another sort of investor area that I see some people going into is senior facilities or assisted care facilities, because let's face it, we're all aging and still have to live someplace, but you might need a little bit of help when you get older. So yeah.
Well, so, just as a side note, because if I was to have my own multi built, it would be fully accessible. It might be only accessible on the ground level, because if it's a 2 or 3 story walk up, so you could have the ground level fully accessible with the drywall already reinforced in the bathroom for grab bars to be installed, and zero threshold, and all of these things that mean that you can have somebody who, let's say somebody's retiring and now they're 68, they've sold their house, but they are still young and active, and they don't want to live in any kind of, retirement community. So they can live in a place that is ready for them as they progress into their older age. Right. But anyway, just a side note: if you're building something, make it accessible, easily transformed into an accessible building.
Yeah, and I see that more and more often with buildings for seniors, as they call them aging in place. They probably have another term I'm not familiar with, but I like the aging in place, and I've actually seen some really fantastic stuff where you can move walls, lift sinks up and down, lift countertops up and down. So if somebody becomes ambulatory, they're in a wheelchair, and obviously everything has to be lower. It can all be lowered for them. You can bump out walls so that if you have to fit a wheelchair in or a wheelchair into a shower, you can do that, mobile walls. So I'm all for those facilities. I'm all for making things easier. My family's not getting any younger either, so yes, you want people to be well taken care of. People who took care of you, you want to take care of them in their age. So I'm glad you're looking at it that way. And who knows, maybe the next building, multifamily that you buy will be one for aging in place. Maybe your parents will live in your place. I don't know.
Oh no, they're country folk. My dad just said on the weekend, the only way they're getting him out of there is feet first. Horizontal.
Yes. Yeah, my brother-in-law's parents are like, well, his father is like that too. He's lived on an acreage his whole life on a farm, and he's got his ham radios and his crops and his tools and his equipment. And no, he's not going anywhere. So if somebody wants to get into this kind of a business, how do you recommend that they start?
Oh gosh, you gotta learn the ins and outs of it for sure, and get those proper contracts. It's probably much easier to have them already good coming to you than having to rewrite them and figure it out by all the mistakes. So, all the things that go wrong, and then you realize, oh, let's rewrite this part of the contract to make this more clear and make the renewal again is one big one that it makes it that it's automatically renewable. That was a key. But yeah, so learn how it works, learn how to talk to people, and then have those contracts. But I have to say, I have a free webinar coming up that is going to go over the exact how to do this, coming up on May 11th at, I think it's 5 p.m. Mountain Time. And I'm going to go into great detail on how to do it, where we find people, who we're looking for, how some of the numbers might look. And yeah, so if anyone's at all interested in doing this, or even just seeing if it's for you, I mean, it's a free webinar, so why not?
Why not? What have you got to lose? Yeah.
Yeah. And
so send me all that information, and what I'll do is I'll post it in the YouTube link, and I'll post it in the social media channels as well, because it's very good for people to have access to this information so they can just explore their options. I mean, some things are going to resonate with you more than others, and that's the great thing about real estate is there's something for everybody. And there's something for everybody at every stage of life. I've known people who bought properties at age 18, first rental property at 18. I mean, blows me away. I wasn't even thinking about that at that age. And, people who start buying investment properties when they're 70. So,
yeah. Well, and one neat thing, even if you're thinking, oh, I would never do this as an active business, but it's just another tool to have in your toolkit. Because you could be looking at this one property and just go, oh man, I've seen deals come across some of the Facebook home selling, home market type sites, and a couple of them that I'm just looking at going, oh my goodness, that one, it was such a smoking deal. And if it was in the right area, it was like was in Calgary or something, and it was, but whatever the thing is, but you might be thinking, I don't want to do this as an active business, but you just never know when a tool like this could be handy. So another example, again, the fix and flip, to be able to not have to put the all of that money down up front, to be able instead to put nothing down, do your flip, and just put the cash in as you need the cash. It's just a great thing to have in your back pocket that you know about, that you can use.
So that's excellent. Yeah. So find out about stuff. They can find out by going to your website, and your information about your webinar will be there. And what is your website, Sherilynn?
Oh, I forget. The easiest thing is for them to go, if you go on Facebook and you search up QD, that's Quebec Delta, Home Quest, then you'll come up to my Sherilynn Milson's Real Estate Insights and Innovations page. And the sign up for the webinar is also the sign up button at the top of that page. But yeah, like and follow the page. And then whenever I do, because I do things like you do too, just random webinar on I've done the multifamily, we did fix and flips, we've done rent to own, of course, and just all kinds of free information on my page as well, that people, if they like the page, then they'll be able to see some of that. And yeah, so that's QD Home Quest.
QD Home Quest.
Registration link, and you can see a couple of videos that I did about agreements for sale as well, so they're still up there.
So some really good resources on that web. So they go to your Facebook page and they look at QD Home Quest.
Yeah.
And then they can find all that really good information.
Yeah,
and that's how they can start. So start just by taking a free webinar, familiarize yourself with the process from someone who's been there, done that number of times, and see if it's for you. If it is, great. If it isn't, also good. There's other stuff out there. So
yeah. But just to make sure that because this one's not going to be live on Facebook, they will need to register for it. It's going to be a webinar off Facebook. So they do need to click that sign up button at the top of the page.
So sign up. Don't just drop in. That's all very good. So I think that's probably all my questions for tonight. Do you have any other words of wisdom you want to impart to people who want to go this route or are considering it or have gone the route?
Yeah, learn what you can. Find out about. You're better off to find out about what's the worst that can happen from somebody who has seen it, or at least seen has the experience to see, oh, that could have happened had we not done this. So finding out what you're getting into from all the possibilities. And again, to always keep in mind that just because you can buy with zero down doesn't mean you should. They're not all good deals.
No.
And you want to, because you're always buying based on the numbers, and that's what it always comes down to, is because we can't help everyone. As much as I would love to, we can't help everyone if those numbers won't work.
No. So yeah, don't get married to the property or the person's situation. Crunch the numbers. If the numbers work, great. If the numbers don't work, walk away.
Yep.
Wish them well. Someone else will help them. Doesn't always have to be you. That's really great. So just to recap, seller financing, there's lots of creative ways to, once you do get seller financing, to move the property on to sell it. You could either go through a realtor, it could be rent to own with a tenant buyer. You could fix and flip it. There's just tons of possibilities that are limitless with your imagination. And then you mentioned you don't take things that are major renos. Just find something that is a good solid property with good numbers in a good neighborhood that you can work with. Don't find anything that's going to have to do foundation or roof repairs or anything like that. Just make sure that it's in good shape. Get your comparatives so that you know what you're walking into with the deal, what you could make walking out, and do your homework. And don't post those cheesy ads that look like they're written by a 5-year-old who got hold of their parents' Sharpie.
I really do.
Signs. We see them in our neighborhood. People stick them onto the stop signs or the 4-way stop signs. Well, they're everywhere. They're always up every weekend, and it says, "I buy houses," and I'm always tempted to call them.
Me too. Do you really buy houses? Really?
You have like $55 million in cash kicking around. You can just like hand a whack of cash over to me. Yeah, but anyway, so you don't do that, which is really great. People go through your website, or you find properties a more legit way, a more elegant way, a more professional way. So,
well, like I say, those signs may work great for some people. They're just not my style.
No, and yeah, it's good to work within your style and do what you're comfortable with, and show yourself how you want to be represented. So, yes. Well, anyway, sorry, go ahead.
Just as a comparison, as far as signs that are attached to stop signs, today there was a man with an 8-foot tall plywood crucifix that was telling us all that Jesus died for our sins. So I don't want my sign up beside. I mean, that's great that he thinks so, but I don't want to be in that category of signage. If I'm going to do signs, they are professional, and we actually do have proper professionally printed signs that do let people know. It says something like another quality project by Cutie Home Quest. We buy houses, and so when we're marketing properties for rent to own, for rent, for sale, that's the sign that we put up, and it has a little banner at the bottom that'll tell people this is for rent to own, this is creative financing available, and like I said, it always says we buy houses. So that's more my style when it comes to signs.
Okay, glad you clarified that, Sherilynn. Anyway, thank you so much for joining me tonight. Thank you so much for sharing all of your information and for sharing information about your webinar. And by the way, for those of you who do have a rental property and you have no idea what to do with the tenants once you get it, that's where I come in. That's what my business helps people with, because I'm an expert in renting properties and finding tenants and everything to do with landlord-tenant law in Alberta. So that's my site, nildaschulte.com. And anyway, thanks again, Sherilynn, for sharing information about seller financing, because I know a lot of people have seen these ads and they've said, really? No, it doesn't really work. I don't really believe it. But when you explain it, I can see how it does work, and I can see how it helps people get out of a jam. So that's a good thing. So thank you again. Have yourself a good night, and we'll be in touch through the social
Excellent.
media
Thanks for having
channel.
me.
Okay, thanks so much. Okay, bye-bye.